I'm here with the Rome boys. We had you all on the show, and I have Tony, Joe, and Chris.
Yes, yes.
All three of the amigos here.
And, amigos, that's better than stooges.
Yeah, that's what our deacon just called us the Three Stooges. So yeah, we'll take amigos.
And y'all were up at the shrine. Let's talk about that first. That was your day at the shrine.
It was great. I've been there personally myself once and brought the family, all 7 kids and my wife before. So, but to be able to have Mass with Father Mitch down there with Mother Teresa, Mother Teresa, Mother Angelica.
There you go.
Yeah, she'll be a saint someday, Mother Angelica will be. Anyways, and personal Mass down there, and then we got to visit with the sisters, and there was a Bible study that we got to sneak back there in the cloister and be able to be there with Father Mitch, and so it was a blessing for sure.
What a beautiful place! My goodness,
and stunning.
The hills of Alabama, and amidst the trees, and there's just this white picket fence winding all the way up. I was blown away.
Yeah. And the St. Angelo region, that's kind of more greenish than Midland, you said? Is that right?
No.
We would like
it to be, but it's brown. It is just brown. We were on the edge of East Texas and West Texas.
Okay.
Meaning, when you get into East Texas, it starts getting greener and greener the more east you go.
Okay.
The more west you go, the browner it gets. And so we're kind of on that edge of that line.
Right.
And it just seems like the brown is moving a little bit farther our direction. The desert just seems to be working its way east. So,
but if you don't like to mow your grass, it's perfect like me. So I don't like to do it. So it's nothing to mow. Woo.
Not this year. Not this year. It's pretty tough.
You probably heard a little bit of frustration in the farmer's voice.
Yeah, well, I keep up with the weather quite a bit. It's part of the livelihood, and it's just we haven't had rain in like over 70 days 7 months. We haven't had a decent rain, and it's been over 170 plus days.
Yeah.
And not consecutive, but we've had over 70 plus days this summer of over 100 degrees. So it's just not fun. And it's not the humidity. We don't have humidity. Zero.
Oh, wow.
Zero humidity. So it is a dry heat. Here in Alabama, it might get, what was the high today?
93, I think.
93, but you had probably 50% humidity,
maybe more than that.
Yeah, probably more.
50, 60% humidity. Yeah, we were 105 degrees, 0% humidity. It is like a blow dryer in your face every day. It's terrible.
And you, as a farmer,
so who wants to move to West Texas? Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were talking about moving away.
Yeah.
and you farm cotton. Are you out in that all day, kind of thing?
Not too much. We do have nice equipment with good air conditioners, so that's nice to have. And I've got a couple employees that do a lot of the outside work for me, which is nice. But no, we try not to be out in it as if we don't. I try to find work for them to do in the mornings while it's cool outside, and then try to get them in a tractor in the afternoons to where they stay in the air conditioning because it is just brutal. It's just brutal. So I find I do a lot more office work these days than tractor work.
Like editing Rome Boys videos.
Yeah, the drought helps because I have more time to do that. If we had a crop growing, I'd be on a sprayer tending the crop. So it has given me some time to edit. So.
Right. Now, Joseph, you have 5 kids.
Correct.
And Tony, you have 7. And Chris, you have 6.
Yes.
And we want to talk about, you suggested, I thought it was a good idea to talk about evangelization at home.
Yeah.
Right? And so it'd be like your family, your parish, diocese.
Yeah, I think we're all maybe a little intimidated about not being a prophet in our own land. So it is intimidating, but it's also intimidating at home whenever we're not perfect dads, we're not perfect parents, and so I think as Christians we don't want to be hypocrites. So it's hard to evangelize and spread the gospel.
Right.
And I think what we've done as Rome Boys to step out and actually put our face in front of a camera for the whole world to see is, hey, these guys aren't perfect, just like they told Jesus, isn't that the carpenter's son? Right. It's not like we're not experiencing something that hasn't already been done.
Isn't that the farmer's son?
Yeah, isn't that the farmer? Yeah. And Joe, your brother was a priest, and your grandfather, or your uncle was a bishop. What have you done with your life?
These guys have a little bit of an advantage here because they moved into the area, so nobody really knows their background too much. Where my area, they saw me grow up. They saw a lot of the mistakes I made and a lot of the
But you grew up
things I
in
did.
a real devout home if your brother's a priest?
Yeah, it was very devout. Well, I'd say, my mom was a convert. She was a Baptist growing up, and then before she got married, she converted, and very faithful. And growing up, your parents try to lay that foundation of the faith for you. And Dad, always in the field. Farming was a lot different than it is now. And he spent a lot of time in the tractor away from the home. Yeah. And he kind of had a conversion, however you want to say it, into the faith when I was in high school. And really got strong in his faith. And Mom was always the one that was, we're going to church on Sunday. You're going to CCD on Wednesday. Go, go, go. But Dad really was like, listen to Mom. And that what we do a lot as dads, just listen. What did your mother say? What did your mom say? Dad, what did you do? What did your mom say? But so a lot of the faith was kind of in Mom's territory. She kind of took the reins. And then when Dad had his conversion and got really strong in his faith, he wanted the reins back. And she was kind of a little reluctant to give them back. But the foundation was laid, I guess is my point, to make a short story long. Is that, that background was there for whenever I would stumble and fall. It was there for me to build on.
And your brother's the priest. He's older or younger?
Younger. I'm the oldest out of five. He's in Denver right now. I'm not quite practicing the priesthood right now. He's discerning some more. Yeah. He's doing a lot of discerning. So, But
awesome guy.
I guess we all.
Great guy.
He's
So
a
pray for him.
great guy. Yeah, I need to pray for him. I just hope he comes back soon. But a lot of let's not get into politics. Yeah.
But that brings up a good point too. I think the witness. I think we all, I'm a priest and you're preaching and things, and we're all very aware of our own weaknesses and everything. And some of that is persevering. I think part of the witness is persevering in your weakness. It's like, you're trying to, I always say I'm getting beat to death by my vices and sins. Sure. And I'm repenting, I'm getting up again. And I think people I find people they're willing to accept that. If they see a faithfulness to begin again.
It's duplicatable.
Right.
Perfection is not.
Right.
And it's interesting you bring that up because we just had a talk on spiritual warfare just a few days ago, last week as a matter of fact. And we talked about how some exorcists will talk about how the demons are there to help, are really there to help you grow in your vices. Or against your vices, sorry. Well, they tempt you to go into your vices, but that helps you grow.
Right.
To be challenged in your faith, to be challenged against your vices helps you grow out of them, become stronger to fight against them. So, that's interesting you bring that up.
And I think that's why what we've found is it's our stories, it's our struggles that really draw people in. We've been encouraged to continue to tell our story. And when people come up to us after a show or a talk, that's what they tell us is, wow, I didn't know you guys were going through that. I had the same experience. Yeah. And when we tell our stories and we are real about it, and as crazy as our experiences may be with the struggles or challenges, whether they're self-inflicted sins or wounds or created by our upbringing, you just never know what somebody else is going through. And I think it's we just had a conversation with a priest here in the dining hall, and he was telling me a story about
his dad.
About his dad who just passed away 6 months ago. But there was another priest who came to him and said, I struggle with losing my dad 8 years ago, and I find myself as a priest just going back to my room and just sobbing, crying. And the priest who was telling me this story said, oh my goodness, I had no idea anybody else was going through this. Even as a priest, you think, wow, you've got all the tools in your tool bag to deal with the struggles of life. But my response to him was, had the other priest not told you his, what his struggle was, would you have shared yours? And he looked at me and his eyes got big and he said, that's a great point. And so coming back to that point of evangelizing to everyone around us, you never know what somebody else may not have experienced, and we all have something to share and uplift each other with. I say a point that the only reason that we speak is because we want to provide information or influence for someone because it's not something that they've heard before, right? You don't want to tell somebody the same thing over and over again necessarily, obviously, if you're praying and meditating. But
unless you're 2-year-old, quit, put that down, put that down, put that down. Yeah.
So every interaction is an opportunity to have a new experience with someone. You never know what to expect. I always say,
go ahead.
Yeah, last thing, action or doubt will take you out of action, right? It keeps us sitting back in our chair. But action, every time, will take you out of doubt. So we just have to take action.
I think it's a fun approach that we have found through trial and error, that you share your struggles, your testimony, how God's worked, and what's gone wrong, and your life experiences. And then you share your faith, however that may be. And then after we have a talk, and all these people come up to us, and then they share their stories. I'm like, don't share. Well, it's great to hear your story. That's absolutely true. But now go out and tell all your family and friends and everybody else your story. Imagine if Catholics did that. You told your stories. You just shared that story with the priest. Priest to a priest, a layperson to a layperson, married couple, a mom that's going crazy with her kids at home to another mom. I mean, we need to know that God is there, and we're really struggling. All of us are constantly on this battle for conversion, and the sacraments are there for us. So I think the approach is, let's be transparent. Let's realize we're human. We have God. We have the sacraments. We have this prayer life to be with us. And we need to do this in community and not be so isolated, especially coming off of COVID. Hey, brothers, like these three guys here, this is what I'm struggling with. I need prayer right now. And the devil's going to hit us when we're down, and realize that God will always pick us up if we, rely on that community, rely on our church to be with us.
I had a friend of mine tell me a story that she was working in a parish, and they had a priest I think he was from another diocese even, but needed like a year off. And he was thinking about leaving the priesthood, real frustrated. Mm-hmm. And the reading came up, Micah 6:8, on the daily readings, and it says, "He has showed you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God." And he said, after meditating upon that he made a decision to go back to the priesthood. That, I took it to mean, I knew what he meant. It's like what my friend was relaying to me. But that sometimes, again, like our own vices can really beat us up, and we can get into the heads of others. We can live in all these expectations and got to do X, Y, and Z and do all. But what does God require of you? To do justice, to do the right thing, to be merciful, to walk humbly with your God, just to follow him. Mm-hmm. So what is he putting in front of you? What is he leading you to do? To make it simple. Maybe I'm getting too fractured and too distracted. And I think John of the Cross talked about, if we give up those things that we're attached to, that we always are finding delight in, then we'll find what our heart really desires, and to focus on God.
And what I hear, what you're saying is keep it simple. The longer I've been married and have kids, I went from let's plan for the week, let's plan for the few days, let's plan for this second, because everything changes. And then if you're present in that moment, looking at that particular person in their eyes, and you're alive in that moment, who knows about the future? Who knows if that's going to even be there? The devil can play into that with fear anyway, so just let it go. Chris does a great example of that. He's just in the moment because your schedule's so busy. But to be there with that person. My wife, we had a t-shirt company for a while, and she made a shirt and just said B, B-E. Just be.
And she loved it. She was on fire about it. She was passionate about it.
Yeah.
And part of it too, I guess, is finding a safe person. You don't become completely transparent. That wouldn't be appropriate.
Absolutely.
Can you all give some tips about that? You kind of have to pick your friends carefully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
how do you go from that one? Because you tend to grow up with your friends constantly change, as you're growing up. I don't have the same friends I did in grade school as I did in high school, as I did in college, to even now. They just kept changing. People just come in and out of your life all the time. But when I see those friends that I used to hang out with, and they haven't really changed all that much, or really haven't grown in their faith, maybe not at all, and I see the way they speak and how they talk, and it's like, was I like that? Did I do that? Did I speak like that? And I was like, I knew the answer. Yes, I did. And just so to be an example for them, when we do finally get to hang out, which is not very often, the people I hang around with the most are under 15. My kids. No, that sounded inappropriate.
No.
Well, yeah. But so, being an example for them on how I treat my wife and how I treat them, and that's a constant struggle. We talked about before you came in here about how we struggle with being lazy. Yeah. How can you be lazy when you have that many kids and a wife and now an apostolate that keeps bringing up more and more stuff to do? And really, I look at it as priorities. How do you show your priorities to your kids? And we're showing God's number one. They got to be second, which that's a juggle.
Right.
That's a juggle because the business demands come from your work, and you've got to be there for your kids as well, and your wife. I mean, you can't leave her out. Because, the kids will eventually leave. You're going to be with her for a long time. So we got to make sure she's happy. If Mama's happy, everybody happy. So, that's a constant juggle. So it really comes down to priorities. And it's tough to juggle that.
Yeah, for me, recently in the last few months, I've been doing spiritual direction, and that's been great because that is the internal form. You can just give everything over to that priest. He's not going to say anything, and here it is. And it's a priest I've known for a while, and we're friends. So then I can just, there it is. Like the first session, I was just able to, here it go, pick off where we left off. So that's been great. And at the same time, our wives, we share everything with them. That's our best friend, And so, and then certain things as men and what we're struggling with, here's the guys, our friends here as Rome boys. So, there's certain people for certain situations, but I think I want to encourage that spiritual direction for laity is a good thing too. I think it's something I learned about in the seminary and as a seminarian, but I came back to that, and my son came up to me the other day and goes, "You're a lot happier, in the last couple of months." Nothing else really has changed, the sacramental practices and prayer life, and that has been added. So that might be something for people to consider.
I agree, Tony. Now that you have that reflection of the last 2 months, it's awesome to hear you say it. That's great in real time here. And to answer your question, and kind of to Joe's point, you do have to discern who you're hanging around. Because there were a lot of people that I hung around that, I think a lot of us have a desire for other people to strive for holiness more than they do themselves. And I struggled with that. In 4th grade, I was leaning up against the washing machine, and my mom was being beat up. And I told my mom, "You can't live like this anymore." In 4th grade. And I said, I've got to leave. I've got to move out. But my mom stayed in that struggle. She chose to be there. And so I had to make the choice to not be with my own mother at that point in my life. And my mom knows this story. We've had this conversation. But there's a great book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. And he's in the Denver area. Him and Chris Stefanik are friends. And
did he start a ministry about like helping parishes and things?
Yes.
Yes.
I believe so. Yes. I have to be careful with talking about bald-headed people because the Rome boys or Joe, Tony, I don't know. No, you're good, Joe.
I'm good for now.
But in the book, it just talks about, and we've experienced this in real ways, in difficult ways and challenges, just the 3 of us hanging out, and 2 of us are brother-in-laws, and we're probably related to Joe. We're just trying to figure out how.
3 of your wives, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, but in that book, it says that you have to have a foundation of trust. And when we can trust each other to know that our goal is to help each other get to heaven, we can say anything to the other person. And you're right in asking your question about helping parishes. I have a friend who has Ablaze Ministries, and they help parishes just figure out how to have a good meeting. And they use his books. One of the books is Death by Meeting. And we were just at a parish in Texarkana, and on the priest bookshelf there were 7 books of Patrick Lencioni's that talk about leadership. And while those may seem like secular titles, it hits us in reality every day. It helps us realize that there are going to be some people in your area, of your life, that you may not get along with, and they may not bring out the best of you, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you need to work to foster that relationship, because you may not be the person that's going to change that about them. I've had to deal with that. So, yeah.
I'd say I've been blessed with friends that, I've got maybe they're just a handful of them, but they're lifelong friends, had all my life and will have all my life. But yeah, we don't hang around as much as we used to. But I hope that, through the way we're doing things with Rome Boys, or even with our own families, that has a positive influence for them. We say this on the show a lot. You tend to act like the 5 people you hang around with the most. And if I can be an influence to those guys who are my friends, then great. There's those lifelong relationships that we can help develop just by living out our faith, living it the way we're trying to grow. We're not perfect at it. We're not great at it. But my hope is that influence not just helps them, but also filters down to my kids, my domestic church, that they pick up on this. And I've said this before when we first started it, farming's a dangerous business, just like anything else. But if something were to happen to me, these videos ain't going anywhere. They'll have their dad for years. I keep thinking about, used to have family reunions. They don't do that much anymore these days. You used to, all the families would get together and open up the photo albums and look at the family members from years gone by and
play dominoes,
drink beer, and then, just have a good time. But now it doesn't happen as much anymore. So, things kind of have a way of coming back around. So I'm hoping years from now, maybe they'll be watching a Rome Boys video at the Matthiesen reunion in 2150 or something.
Interesting dynamic is what Joe said. Your friends do change over time. We have different, and what's I think interesting for me, all I ever wanted was a family, and so when you are trying to figure that out as a dad, and you have you got a wife now, and then you grow that family, God willing, with kids. We're all just learning. We're all just learning how to do whatever it is that God has called us to do.
I tell that to my kids a lot. It's like, I don't care what y'all decide to do. If it's what God's called you to do, I've got your back 100%.
Yeah.
That's support.
I'm sure you guys have seen that study, heard about it, where determined that like the father's practice of the faith has a bigger impact on the kids than the mothers, even though oftentimes the mothers are taking up the role,
sole one,
doing a lot of heavy lifting. But why? I can't put my finger on it too. There's something about. One time I was at a men's conference up in the Seattle area, and they had, like, before the thing started, everybody was there like for muffins and breakfast and stuff, and they were sitting at the tables and talking, and it just struck me as there's something powerful about it, that when men get together, it just seems like there's something happens that is healing and strengthening, and I describe it like there's a certain presence a man brings, and I, what the women brings too. I mean, her personal gifts and just like who she is in her being, is just. I kind of marvel at it. She just is in the realm of the spiritual values more easily than men. So you would think there would be that presence about them, but I sense it more about men for some reason. I don't know what the phenomena is, but
I find it interesting that as you were talking, you're kind of clenching your fist, and the way I kind of look at it is like a man is like a rock, like the rock. And the church is the rock, the foundation, and it's solid and it's not moving and it's stable. Although Chris and I in our upbringing, our dads weren't there for us, but the church is always there. And that's what we want to be as fathers, to be there for our kids and invest as much time as possible. I mean, evangelization with Rome Boys is good, but evangelization with our kids is everything. They're the future of the church that we look at every day and we help bring into this world and educate. And then you move from there to your parish church. And in our particular diocese, it's just crazy. It's a missionary diocese. The bishop just recently mentioned if one priest left at this point, there'd be no one to cover it. So me growing up in Denver, Colorado, and getting a master's degree in theology, that was a dime a dozen. But in our diocese, there's hardly anybody. It's dry as far as the land. It's dry as far as catechesis and evangelization. So God has placed us there to be able to be that rain, God willing, to soak the land and bring that gospel. But if we always picture that tier, first my family, then the local church, then the diocese, within all, if you're hitting your family, I think all of it gets hit in the long run.
Yeah, because if we through Rome Boys reach 1 million people, but lose our kids,
amen.
What good did we do?
Right, absolutely.
We did probably worse.
Mm-hmm.
In our house, I would picture what you're trying to say there. I would say that in my house, my wife is the spiritual warrior. She the prayer warrior. She's the spiritual warrior of the house, but I'm the spiritual leader. Is how I would put it. Talking about that, there's something about that men dynamic. What is it that we bring to the table? That I was talking to a group of teenagers, and I just asked them. I said, "Why do you watch TV? Or why do you watch football? Do you watch football on Sundays?" They were, yeah. Why do you watch football on Sundays? Because Dad watched it. Are you a Cowboys fan, or a Denver Broncos fan, or a Houston Astros fan? Why? Because that's what Daddy did. There's just something that dads bring to the table, but how are we using that influence? Are we using it in a positive way? Great, sports are great. They're a great distraction, but it's not the most important thing in the world,
So, I think that dynamic for me is, it's an interesting balance of how a man loves, even if it's brothers, just friends. Because what we all desire love, and I think as men, it's that's a weird subject, but it is.
The L word.
Yeah, but it is dynamic. So it's almost like men say less words than women, right? So when a man speaks, often people listen.
And 6 daughters.
Yeah.
You better be doing a
way
lot
to keep
of
me holy.
Yeah.
Way to keep
That's
me
why you talk so
humble.
much on the show.
This is what I need. Boom. Get it, Father Mark.
Oh man, that was funny.
Yes. Now I'm stunned. I don't know what to say.
You say the dynamic with men, what you bring to it.
And God is a man, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing more powerful than him. And the head of the household is with the man at the head, right? And it's just, we're always in this place of authority and position. And Father Mitch was just in the Bible study saying that the spoken word was more important than the written word. That's why the Jews couldn't even say the name of God. And when men speak, I think people listen. It's just something that's built into how God designed the way we communicate inherently.
And I would imagine with your story too, not knowing your father for a period of time, and has God sent like father figures into your life that have really blessed you and helped you?
Yes, indeed. And there were, a lot of women actually along the way who took care of me and took me in. My grandmother, my aunt, my uncle was there, but he wasn't always present. He worked what they call graveyard shifts, at night, and so he was asleep during the day. And but then when I became friends with Adam in 3rd grade, his mom was a foster parent, and she stopped fostering. And her husband is 7 foot tall. He played basketball for Texas A&M University and was a man of very few words. But when he spoke, I was awestruck. I listened, and he was very calm, he was very gentle, and he was a giant. And so I saw love in a huge man, And that's when I saw, and they took me to church with them, and that's when they taught me what a family should look like, and how it should operate, and they told their kids they loved them, and it was all foreign to me, honestly. And then, so he was probably the biggest male influence in my life, because
Quite literally.
yeah,
7
right.
feet tall. I mean,
Yes.
quite literally. The Lord, yeah.
So you wouldn't miss it. God put this 7.
Yeah, right. That's exactly what I needed. Yes, yeah. So so my stepdad, he taught me manners, but I was scared to death in his presence, and he beat my mother, and constantly. I mean, in terrible ways, and he slept with other women, and I was witness to all of this, and I saw the brokenness in my mom. So I saw exactly what not to do, and how a man, just takes advantage of the masculinity that he's been given, which is no chasteness, So I saw two opposite people there, and then, some time later, I begged God to show me who my dad was, and standing in the middle of a field at a party that I shouldn't have been at. I was 18 years old, and I remember looking up at the stars, and I just started crying. Like, when are you going to give me? When are you going to allow me to know who my dad is? I didn't know his name. My mom didn't. I didn't know who he was. And it was very clear to me, as clear as the stars in the sky that night. As cliche as it may sound, I heard God say, I am your father, and I'm all that you need. And that's when I stopped actually looking for my biological father. And then it was just 4 or 5 years later that I got a phone call from my new stepdad, who knows my dad, and took a paternity test, and of course, found my biological father, and he's been an awesome influence. I see why I act and have the mannerisms and behaviors that I do, because it's just like my dad.
Yeah, it seems so critical to know where we come from, where we're rooted in. We just want to know that, and I think that's part of the church's teaching on like sexual ethics and what's allowed in terms of helping a person conceive. You can't. It's supposed to be from the act of love between a man and a woman. So they're born in a family, and both parents, and where you come from. And I even saw secular studies that helped people that knew like the struggles of their parents, grandparents. They were more likely to persevere through their own struggles, drawing from the witness that they saw in their family. I think that's so true. But just to know who we are. And you remind me too of Mother Angelica, that she talked often. Her parents were divorced, and saw her father something like, I forgot, it was 7 or 9 times or something. I forgot the number, but he he didn't send the alimony or any of that stuff, and but how she had to heal that, her view of the Father, the Heavenly Father, because it was distorted. And today I've grown to appreciate too just traumas in life, that leaves a wound, and that's stuff to work through. But it seemed like there's a place that God can come into our life in these difficulties and these poverties and traumas that we have to heal. And like someone mentioned earlier about how he uses all that to bring us closer to him.
It's amazing how much a difference men can make in a young man's life, for sure. For me, in high school, my high school football coach was amazing, like the epitome of masculinity. In like the 40 age group, he was the strongest, most athletic. He won awards. Like, we were deathly afraid of the man. But at the same time, he was so amazingly like a role model. And would call me on the phone and says, Frasco, I'm going to make you, one of the captains on the team. I believe in you. I trust in you. I'm like, these are things I needed to hear, my dad was around, but he just wasn't. He moved to Michigan, and my mom was in Colorado. So there was that struggle there. And then youth minister Matt Stone that invited me to go on a mission trip. And next thing you know, I'm singing songs in front of 500 people and praising God and giving my life to Christ. And I was like, if he didn't invite me, I wouldn't have been here, and I wouldn't be here, Mr. Lenzini, theology teacher, and just spreading the faith for the first time. Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, and then he's just teaching the faith in a real way, talk about marriage and sex and all the things about that. I'm like, wow, this is cool. This is amazing. I think I want to do this the rest of my life. If he wasn't there, I wouldn't be here today. So, and then priests, so many solid priests that were just such great examples of forgiveness and love and being that fatherly figure, that spiritual father figure that, like I said, all men need to rise up and look for young people that are hurting, because our society is nuts, right, and is need of the love of the Father, like we just talked about, both physical and spiritual. There's so much there.
I just was telling this story to Rhonda Grunwald, who's in Texas, promotes vocations and stuff. And, my father passed away when I was in college, first was diagnosed with cancer first year, and then a year and a half later died. And then I discerned the call when I was 25. And it was unthinkable not to go to Mass on Sunday. He had us there, he had us in CCD. And I remember going to college, and I just thought, I went to Colorado School of Mines out there in Denver, and I just thought, well, everybody goes to church, right? Protestant.
Yeah, right.
And this was a God thing. My roommate was that kind of Catholic. He was in church every Sunday, so I had to ride and stuff. But anyway, when I discerned the call, I was struggling. I was in seminary, and I was struggling. I said, is this really for me? This is a big commitment, responsibility, and am I going to be happy and all that? It's kind of self-centered thinking.
Yeah.
But I was visiting my grandfather in New Orleans, and we're eating like crabs and crawfish. We'd pile the shells on the table.
Nice, nice.
And I remember he was drinking like a Jack's beer or something. And he wasn't one to make a lot of conversation, but I remember I was just kind of quietly picking these crabs, and he said, so how's it going? And he would never ask me that question.
Whoa.
I don't remember asking it. And I said, I don't know. I knew because I knew what he was talking about kind of in a deeper way.
Yeah.
I'm not just asking you how your day was.
Yeah.
Right. How are you doing?
How's your seafood going?
Yeah.
How are you?
I told him, I said, I don't really know. I don't know about this. And he said, well, don't start that static. He just called it static. I said, it's a good life. And I remember when he said that, I just felt like this strength, that it was like, I just need to hear that from the Father, my
father figure.
Yeah. And I was thinking about it the other day. And so, it's interesting with our stories, maybe it could be a prideful thing. We tell our stories or whatever. But when I tell it, something new often strikes me. And and the other day, I was thinking, because he had wanted to be a priest when he was growing up, but my grandfather's parents got a divorce. And back in those times, like, you couldn't become a priest. And I thought, and he always had a great love, respect for the church. And I felt like it was, I don't know, I just felt like God used, and he wasn't like this Mr. Enthusiastic guy, but, he just came in with the right answer at the right time.
Yeah.
And I think it came out of his background, his respect, and he wanted to do it himself.
Yeah, there it is. That's what I thought you might say.
Yeah, and I think men, they just need to hear that kind of approval or encouragement or acknowledgement from someone. Yeah,
That's it.
I think God sends it, when we need it.
We have to look for those moments too, because we were in the middle of adoration the other day, and I'm like, it doesn't matter. I know I'm supposed to do this. And I pulled one of my sons over and I said, I am proud of you, and I love you. And whatever vocation you pick, it's up to you. Listen to God. He is the answer, as I'm pointing to Jesus in the monstrance, because I think there's some pressure there that he should follow a religious calling. I said, whatever you do, like Joe said, I'm going to support you and I have your back. And okay, now go back and pray. But, we have to have we have to look for those God moments, those Holy Spirit moments where we can touch that person's life and not hesitate, like Chris mentions often, and say,
I think you mentioned too earlier, mentioned about how we can grow by seeing the struggles. We can avoid struggles that maybe our parents did by their witness. Yeah. There's something humbling about seeing your heroes as humans. My dad's my hero, but I saw him growing up, as I was growing up. Faith wasn't all that important until it got to, as I thought maybe it was too late for me, Yeah, whatever, Dad. That's just something that you're doing, And then years later, here I am, trying to be a model like him. Trying to be like him. So I saw the struggles he went through. I had to do my own struggles. Maybe it was a little too late, but I'm hoping that through my example with my kids, maybe they can avoid some of those things that I did. And just because being real with them and having those bold conversations to just let them know that this is the way the world is, this is how it wants you to be, but this is how you're supposed to be. Let's be strong in our faith. Let's,
Guys,
I hope to be their hero.
Yeah, and people come up to us and say like, "What you guys are doing is amazing," and like, I could never be like you. Literally, they say those things because they're too broken or whatever, and that we just take that opportunity to just squash that bug where it sits, because what are you talking about?
Right.
God built you for greatness,
Amen.
and I'm not saying that we think we're greatness,
Nope.
but it is amazing how what you just said. You talked about you don't know what it is when men get together, but you feel that strength in the room. When you just told your story, it's almost like I felt the Holy Spirit in the room. It's just I can't explain it. I knew right where you were going because we were at an Acts retreat, and there was a guy who's on his first Acts retreat, young guy, and he just had deacon written all over him, and I don't think. I know he had no idea that it was written right on his forehead, and guy next to me leaned over and said, "Don't you think that guy should be a deacon?" I just stood up from my seat, walked straight to him. Somebody said hi to me. It was almost like I stiff-armed him in the face. And I went straight to him and I said, and it was slow-mo and I was saying, roar. And I said, I don't know if anybody's ever told you this, but it's just on my heart. I think you should be a deacon. And he just looked up at me and he said, me? Like he was just shocked by it. But it was obvious to everyone else in the room. But, he said, I'm not that smart. It's not about intelligence.
No.
So we have to step up and say just those simple things to encourage our brother.
Well, it's the invitation. It's the invitation.
It's all
about that.
It never occurred to him.
Yeah.
Now that seed's been planted.
Yeah, there you go.
We'll see what happens.
There you go.
I think too, because I think back like the witness, my grandparents. I knew my grandparents. 3 of them lived in their 90s. I knew them very well. They were all in New Orleans, but when I most often think of them, I think about their struggles. I think so. When we witness to people, we want to think, well, he's great, and it's true. I mean, hopefully our virtues, our fidelity, and things like that. But maybe it's the virtue of perseverance that I think most often of is like. They made it through the Great Depression.
Yes.
Or they had a sick child, or they had,
Right, yeah.
Even Janet Smith points this out about marriages that you think, well, it's better for the kids. We get divorced, and they say, and she makes the point that you're teaching them fidelity and perseverance, which is something we all have to do. Whoever we are in life, we're going to have to persevere in something, and we'd like to. I always say. I'm not going to get through this looking good. We got some position in the community. So I'm not going to be able to hold on to this exterior, whatever the hell it is. I'm not gonna, but because I think we all have struggle, and so the perseverance witnesses to us most powerfully.
Absolutely. When Father was talking about that lunch today, who Chris was talking about, the struggle he has the most is obedience. He wanted to go to his father when he was on his deathbed, but the bishop said no. So he had to be obedient. We find that same struggle with our bishop, the bishops are wives. So there's a certain obedience that we have to have with them. And so we're growing in that. So we share that with you guys as far as being obedient. Where was I going with this?
Interestingly enough, the comparison of that was, Father Chris Ehler says, I thought it was going to be, chastity and, restraining my sexual nature as a man. Lo and behold, it was obedience that I struggled with the most, and obedience is absolutely perseverance.
I know where I was going now.
Aristotle, I'm going to mess this up.
I'm sorry. I lost
Go
my
ahead.
train of thought, but you were talking about your grandparents, and there's a generational gap there. You're talking about they grew up in the Great Depression. A lot of those people came back as hoarders. They came out of they came out of the Great Depression. They didn't get rid of nothing. We went through that whenever my grandfather passed away and cleaning out a lot of his stuff. It's like, why did he keep this stuff for? But anyway, that perseverance in their faith, though, that was one thing that they never lost.
Yeah.
And then you see this kind of jump into our generation now where you find, and I'm no psychologist, but you find divorced couples, the kids from those divorces, now it's an option. You have a child who comes from divorce is an option. Where that generation before, my grandparents, your grandparents, that was not an option. That didn't happen. You don't do that. You get divorced, you stick it out and you persevere through it. But then somewhere in there, that option got thrown in there, and now it's just everywhere. So how do we be that model, that rock of persevere through this, that obedience to one another, and let's get through this instead of, that's it, I'm done. Let's fight for it. I think that's what the thing is that men have dropped the ball as far as fighting for it. Let's get back into
fighting for marriages, fighting for the church,
fighting for our kids,
everything.
And their purity. I mean, this world is attacking purity left and right. All day long. And how do we fight for that purity for them?
People don't even keep jobs anymore. You look at, there's so much turnover in every industry. To hear somebody say that they worked somewhere for 25 years, it's just, wow, you're an anomaly,
I've been farming for 22 years.
Don't quit now, Joe.
Say that with a hint of sadness.
What advice would you give to a young couple getting married about like that dance?
Don't do it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Well, I could think that about the priesthood. This is a lot. It's beautiful, but it's a lot harder than what you probably think it's going to be. Right? Because I think it's just a Christian vocation. You got to die to yourself, right?
Absolutely.
That does not happen easily.
The cross is everywhere.
The old Adam doesn't want to die. But what would y'all tell a young guy getting married? That dance of like the roles, headship, and all that to work that out and how that dynamic happens.
And you're gonna have struggles and you're gonna disagree, but somebody has to choose to not try to win. Somebody just has to give.
It's not a competition, it's a team.
It's exactly right.
Yeah.
Because in every argument and every struggle, why do people continue to fight until they quit? Because somebody doesn't just get down on their knees and say, whatever it is that I've done, I'm sorry.
And in the teaching world, you would say to a student, probably so. And it kind of just goes from there. Like, the conversation is done. We cool off. We're all good or whatever else. And I always say, at least with marriage advice, I don't know if this directly answers the question, but 99% of marriages last if you pray together every day. So having that own personal prayer life and then also a prayer life as a couple, eventually, God willing, that'll be, a family with kids. You eat together every day, so communication is happening, good, bad, ugly, okay. Then marital bliss in the beginning, and then as it gets to be real, and the struggles and rub my feet, you just do it, because it's the right thing to do, because that's what she wants you to do. And then the most important one, which I say in almost all my talks, to be open to life, and have that mentality that we will be open to life at every moment in our marriage, through thick and thin, because we love children. We're open. This is part of the vows that we're about. And a lot of couples don't enter into that mindset and to know all the way, we are going to be open to life. My wife the other day even said there was a lady we heard about that got pregnant and didn't want to get pregnant. And she goes, sorry, I didn't ask, but we offered, for adoption for the child. So I'm like, that's fine, because we're open to life. We don't want that child to be, on the streets or whatever else.
So when you get married, my advice for my future son-in-laws is going to be, are you ready to die? Because you have to die for my daughter. You have to die for your wife, because not physically, but all your hopes and all your dreams and all your aspirations in this life, they have to die, because it's no longer you. It's the two of you, it's y'all, to bring out a Texas term here. It's y'all's dreams. It's y'all's aspirations. It's y'all's future that you're fighting for, that you're working on. So this is a team effort. Y'all need to work together. Make sure God is number one, and let's work together. And maybe not the first advice. Maybe we'll cut that part out.
Because when the two are one, everything's going to be all right.
Right, exactly. Because it is. It's a team. My wife and I are a team, and I think that's probably one of the mistakes that I made first off was like, this is her job. This is my job. I'm going to do my thing. She's going to do her thing, and her thing is taking care of the kids and taking care of the house and all this stuff, and I'm just going to go out and earn the money. And that's not right. That was not right. That was a big mistake on my part. And it's a team effort. Her job is not just taking care of the house and the kids all by herself. No, this is a team effort. I'm, if not more responsible than she is. So,
and even like this is practical. If one cooks, then the other person cleans. If one does laundry, another person folds. Like, just be there, anticipate what the spouse needs, what the kids needs before they ask, and then the reward will come later. So
absolutely. My wife told me all the time that what turns her on the most is when I'm doing the dishes. So there you go.
I love how we have you asked for one thing we all get to give too. So I want to say that if I was on my deathbed, it's a couple there standing there like, why are you in my hospital room? Is that enjoy the heck out of it.
Yeah, don't forget the fun. Good call, man.
Every vocation that we have, yes, life is a struggle, but are we not called to joy? We are called to joy, and I think we simply forget that. And it's, woe is me and my struggles and all the things that I deal with. And here, like you mentioned and referenced, my selfish ways and my selfish thoughts. I always talk about there's only two motivators. And I try to operate my entire life under this principle. What am I going to live by? The two motivators. There's only two. Inspiration and desperation. And I often liken desperation to, I want to be good because I don't want to go to hell. That's a desperate way of living, But I don't think that's why hell exists. I think we are not running away from hell. We're running to God, And why not live an inspired life? I get a little more excited after I drink a cup of coffee. But you know what? I think what most people tell me is that you're excited about things. You're excited about life. Man, if you're getting married, that means you're stepping into a sacrament. Just get excited about it. Enjoy the heck out of it.
I'm glad you said that. I mean, we've been married for almost 18 years, and one of the things I take pride in is I can still make her laugh.
Oh, amen.
That's a lot of fun. So bring out the fun.
What do you most marvel about your wives, or what kind of dazzles you, impresses you?
Don't ask Joe, because he might.
Yeah, she can share.
I'm out.
No. We could probably answer the others.
That'd be fun.
Question.
Oops.
But
the sacrifice. My wife is the epitome of always thinking of others before her own needs. She'll cook a meal. She'll clean everything in the kitchen. Did you even eat? Wow. I don't know if it's a man thing or it's just a me thing, but I'm like, how many sacrifices did you do today? For others, and thinking of others before yourself. It's so quick to say, but then I'm picturing it at all times. Kids are getting up in the night. She's there. She's anticipating the needs of, the kids for school and homeschooling, and that's a 24/7 job, and, what's going on the next day with appointments, what's going on with different church events, and just everything she's in it and she's living it. So it's that, yeah.
That kind of struck me the other day. I forgot what triggered it in me, but it was that the greatness of, because this was what it was. I know I was, I knew I had some single friends and then got married and they weren't able to give as much time to church and things like that, spiritual things, pray as much, whatever. But, I could see in marriage, it's you're together and there's this great opportunity to love and sacrifice, very premier Christian virtues, to practice humility in a very intense way. I think, to me, in a more intense way than community life and religious life, even that, just because it's that constant concrete call right there, that you could practice charity with one another. And that's, right, love is the essence of holiness, sanctity. So,
Yeah, go back to that whole competition versus teamwork thing. You know, I've been around couples that just neither one of them could be wrong. You know, they would just fight tooth and nail.
It's like two lawyers in a courtroom, right?
Yeah, they were just at each other, and they would get to where they would just yell in front of us, and that we just did not want to be around that. But to answer your question about my wife, I'd say that it's how she puts her whole heart into it. When she decides to do something, it's all in, 100% goes into it. I mean, she puts her whole heart into everything she does. And sometimes she's a little reluctant to do a few things because of that, because maybe she doesn't have the time or the energy to do it. But when she does, it's all in. And she came from a broken home, you know, and divorce was on the table. When we first got married and we'd have an argument, she'd want to go run off to her mom's and wasn't sure she wanted to stay married. I was like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? You know, I came from a Catholic family that wasn't an option. We're going to get through it. It's going to be okay. But now after the reversion and the learning of the faith and everything, like I said, she's more of a Catholic than I am. And yeah, it's no way. Yeah, that is no longer an option. And she goes, yeah, you're going to have to die to get rid of me. So she puts her whole heart into everything. So
This is an awesome question.
yeah, it really is.
My wife is perfect. It's crazy.
We're going to need that sound bite to play back to her.
In all of her imperfection, the coolest part is that she could have had any man in the world, and she, holy cow,
Struck a nerve.
I'm so broken, and she said yes to me, and I can't believe it. Can't believe it. And to know. Right, this is when you know that God loves you. Whenever you know how broken you are, and yet He's going to die for you, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's awesome. Yeah. Somebody else needs to say something because I can't. I've never broke down in thinking about it, but.
Yeah.
So when she said yes, was this the day that she missed Mass?
That
one time? No.
No. Oh, wow. Didn't expect that at all. Way to go, Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
But,
Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, I have to elaborate just to the point of I really come from a very broken place. I not having my dad, and she was dating somebody who, their families had gone back generations, and they were in a polka band together, and they went to church together, and, it seemed to me like she was in the picturesque story. And then, for many reasons, they were no longer dating. And then here I come with so much baggage and just, and I did terrible things. And if people knew what I did, maybe it would make my story better to say God is the answer to all, But the fact that she said yes. Sorry if I'm messing up the audio. But yeah, so... Yeah, that's sacrificial love.
Now, the younger listeners are Googling what polka is.
Polka band. What's that?
Yeah.
No,
Well,
I think it was. I don't know if Thomas Aquinas said this. I know Joseph Pieper writes about the virtue of fortitude, and he talks about women having I think he speaks of like a greater perfection of it, in the sense that if the essence of fortitude is like holding on to the good. We can think of it as attack and defend and stuff, maybe kind of a very masculine forms of it. But women excel in this holding on to the good, and like persevering, and just,
see that.
I can hear that to me, what you're saying, that quality of through thick and thin, and as you quoted in Romans, He loves us while we were yet sinners. And I always find that's such a beautiful part in movies. I was thinking things that get me in movies is like when someone in a position of strength helps a weaker person or forgives a person or extends a hand at a cost to him, comes out of himself. And when the person is in their weakest moment, to me that always just strikes me as like just so Christian and so moving. And again, that's in marriage, So.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I think as you grow closer to your spouse, all the things that used to look like imperfections are no longer. So my wife will leave her shoes right in the middle of where I walk, I might trip on them. I would be like, dang it, in the past. But now I'm like, that's my wife's shoes. I love her. And I'll even pick them up because I'm like the organizer, like the house clean. And she texted me while we were here, like, the house is a mess. And I'm like, that's awesome. And now that wasn't me a few years ago. They were like, oh, the house is a mess. I'm going to have to go home. But now I'm like, great, because it's where life is happening. Kids are having fun. They're learning. They're growing in their faith.
They're not learning to clean, but
Yeah.
they're learning.
That's just true. Yeah, we need a cleaning lady. I'm going to volunteer. But yeah.
I kind of want to reverse the question on you, Father Mark.
Yeah, what's your quality about your wife?
The church.
Yeah, I mean,
Your community.
you're experiencing a vocation too, and I know there's struggles in it, but there had to be this moment where you knew you were right where you were supposed to be.
I tell this story too, that I remember when I visited, I'd set up to go visit a community in California, and then somebody brought me down here, and the superior said, come stay with us a week. And so before I could make that trip to California, I came down here, and I just described it as I felt like it fit like a glove. It wasn't the television work. It was like the community life and the adoration. Rhonda Grunwald was telling us about vocations. We interviewed her last week, and I forgot, it was like a high percentage. I want to say it was like 80% of vocations priesthood involved like Eucharistic adoration.
Oh, wow.
And so that was just so central to our community. Mother Angelica was our founder, support our perpetual adoration. We're supposed to have a deep contemplative dimension and an active dimension to our life. But yeah, I just felt like it fit living in community, but adoration. I was like making the holy hour before I came here. I heard Fulton Sheen, I just started doing that.
Yeah.
And
that'll help.
Yeah, and it's really, that's just so, for me, it was just so fundamental, just that life of closeness through the Eucharist and prayer and things. But I love preaching. I mean, I love the television work, and I tell this story where I was at Steubenville, did some pre-theology work there, and
Cool.
And they had this youth minister brought his kids up, and he's this real outspoken guy, really kind of masculine guy. And he said, I just like being where the action is, the action of the Holy Spirit, And
That's cool.
And I just, something went into that, because I knew just what he meant. It's almost like, you kind of want to be where God's acting intensely in people's lives, and the priesthood, you're just hearing confessions, you're seeing God work, and you hear a confession, somebody's been away for decades.
Oh, yeah.
It's so powerful. And just too, how I've been ministered to by priest in confession. It's we got a guy that comes to confession here, and I would just sort of, I don't know, I'd be walking between buildings and stuff, and I would, I'd hear his confession stuff, and he gave me this icon of Jesus the Good Shepherd. It's like he's sort of like moving across the hills and stuff. And he said, this reminded me of you, because you just always seem to appear out of nowhere.
Rise up behind the bushes.
Yeah. And I thought, that's the best compliment I could get. I felt
awesome.
like, that I'm available to this guy. Because I know as a early young priest, you're worried about, okay, what am I going to say? I got to help these people.
Yeah, right.
If I could tell you something in a few minutes that would fix you,
Oh, man.
it's not going to
Those
happen.
guys.
It's just not going to happen.
But I found, to me, like the best quality, one of the essential quality or whatever of being a confessor, to be available. If people can't find you, if you're not there,
Wow.
they can come.
Yeah.
And just because I know what it's like to want to go to confession, find a priest. And
How simple is that?
yeah, so yeah, I think the call is God gives a gift. He calls some to this, and he sustains you. He calls you to a closeness to him and gives you these means to do it. And but yeah, so
You wrap that up with the connection of like the sacramental vocation of just being available.
For one,
If I could go back and I could change my answer about what to tell that newly married couple, just be available.
yeah.
If we were just available to our wives, to our spouses, in what their needs were.
And I think that comes back to the presence of the man. Because even I think of like witnesses of masculinity in my life, some of them weren't very virtuous, but they were present there, and I just grabbed hold of it. They just fed me. So there's something, just being present. I think God inspires us what we need to do, and one of our guys preaches on this every now and then. There was a shepherd from the Middle East that wrote a book on shepherding, and they're trying to protect the sheep from the attackers, the wolves, or the heat, or the bugs. And if they need water, they need shade. If they don't have these things, they can't fatten up. If they're anxious, they're always like looking for the wolf. It's like they can't.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing was just to be present. The shepherd to be present. And he's going to know what to do. The wolf comes, you hit him with the staff. I think guys are overwhelmed too. It's like, how can I do this family thing? Right? It's
sure.
big. Yeah.
It can be very overwhelming.
Yeah.
Especially the more kids you have. It's just it can come at you at the strangest times. Like, oh my goodness, I have 5 kids. Oh my goodness, but you're just saying that having that shepherd present, having the priest present, having you guys there for us, it does.
It means everything to us. Yeah.
It does have a calming effect.
I know a guy that has a lot of kids and everything, and I know he's intense in his own way. And he seems kind of lethargic, and he'll address things when he has to. But he'll say it. The kids maybe are starting to act, and he'll say something. Then he kind of goes back into his easygoing style. It's kind of like he knows just what he has to do.
You got to find your groove.
He's like an old NFL quarterback. He knows what he needs to do.
I like that.
There's a certain volume we have that the kids just know that they're in trouble, or a little snap of the finger. It's like, oh, they get in line. Yeah.
All right, last question. You guys do men's ministry. Pornography is an epidemic. Do y'all talk about that? What do you tell
78% of all unique searches on the internet, 78% are pornography searches.
Wow.
Pornography, we do talk about it. We talk about it, in the truck a lot when we're traveling, and just how terrible it is. We didn't realize, I went to a DCYC, Diocesan Youth Conference, and Marie Francois Angel and her husband, he said in his talk, if we could just get young people to just stop looking at pornography, I could drop the mic and walk away. It's the biggest problem. It's terrible. It's how VHS came about. It's how DVD came about. It's how Blu-ray came about. It's what's influenced every form of media.
Because it's outselling everything?
Because the industry is so powerful and there's so much money in it that they influenced what came next.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so when VHS was getting kicked off the shelf, it's because the porn industry was saying, we're not going to use this beta or this plasma disc. Right. We're going to go with DVD. Right. So that's the way of the world.
Now the young people are looking up beta. It's like, what is a beta? The young people are Googling beta right now.
Oh, yeah, right now on the show.
Polka, now they're looking at beta. I remember
and
beta.
Here we go. We're moving into virtual reality with the metaverse and everything. And if we don't meet people where they are, I'm not saying go to porn sites and stop them. I'm saying we got to be on social media. We got to be on the airwaves, like what you guys have been doing for so long.
We were talking even here. There's a porn place, nude dancing place that is in San Angelo where we live, and there's a billboard right there. And we're like, let's rent that billboard there, right by that place, and find a way to reach the guys that go in there and the ladies that go in there. I mean, we need to be proactive in a way as much as we can. It starts for us, our sons and daughters, to make sure they're okay. I just remember in college as an RA, I'd go down the hallway when you had the old, computers at the end of the hallway for everybody, and everybody's like closing their computers and everything else, because you just knew that it's a one-on-one conversation to help them to realize purity is the way to go. And it's hard. It's a struggle. I mean, I've been in confessionals. I'm like, you walk in, you don't even see the act of contrition. You see a pamphlet, How to Overcome Porn. Well, at least that's a good step. That's something there. But obviously, priests are hearing it. So again and again, go back to the sacraments and then have men to hold you accountable. There's several young men that I taught I said, you can call me anytime or text me if you have that temptation, and Mr. Frasco, I need prayers right now. I'm really tempted. I want to look at porn. Good. You need people to pray and lift you up during those times. So it's important that we are proactive, that we are talking about it. Men are looking at it. We know this. So we need to cling to Our Lady, have a picture in our wallet. Anytime that temptation, 3 Hail Marys, and do that repetitiously. Have a crucifix and a rosary in your pocket. Grab those when it's hard and you want to. One of my friends in the seminary, he struggled with it. So he would go for a run, 1 mile, 2 mile, 3 mile, 4 mile, 5 mile. You're struggling again? Yep. and then he would go out later in the day and might do another 5 miles. And it's but he's finding a way to channel it though, because men are physical. So we have to find a way to physically have that outlet to be able to deal with it.
It is a poison, and once it gets in there, it's hard to get it removed. It's a struggle that I've struggled with. I think most men have. And it's just, we're visual. There's a reason why God made women beautiful, and guys, that's how we see them. It's not a coincidence that we're visual people, and He made them beautiful. So, and I just think that we've taken it, this culture. Deep down we know it's wrong, because why do we hide it? Why is it something we do in secret? Why is it something that we don't want anybody else to see? Because deep down we know it's wrong, but yet the culture is trying to make it normal. Why not just do it? I heard a buddy of mine sent me a message that there's a college, I forget what state it's in, that it's going to be offered as one of the classes. Basically. But anyway, it's just something that we do need to overcome, and I think it's because the obvious objectifies, but what it really does is it puts that poison in your head of thinking that this is normal. This is what love is. No, that's not what love is. Sex is. It's an expression of love between a man and a woman, but what's the purpose? Procreation. Otherwise, why would the industry spend so much money trying to prevent it? Because that's what sex is for. But the world has turned it into, the culture has turned it into a contact sport, to where now we don't know which team we're playing for, or which bathrooms we're supposed to use, or what gender am I supposed to be. And it's all about the feelings. I love Ben Shapiro. He says, truth doesn't care about your feelings, and the truth is that it hurts and it's painful and it's a disease, and we need to find a cure.
I think it comes back to, over half of all marriages end in divorce, and the male figure that is not imposing chivalry on their sons and even their daughters. Pornography is not an individualistic sin that doesn't hurt anybody. Participating in it at any level, even if it's free on your phone, you are participating in sin and evil, and you're opening the door for Satan. And I tell you, I don't know that we're trying to overcome the natural spirit of how God created us. And the devil, all he can do is twist the truth, right? And so he's taking this beautiful concept of being pro-life and distorting it. And I'm going to maybe sound a little dark right now, but I think that the only thing that will stop it is an EMP or something crazy that knocks out all power and electricity, that doesn't allow people to charge their phones anymore. I don't think it's going away.
It's that far gone.
I think it's only going to get worse. And I think it's going to get more intimate to the human spirit. And I think they're going to, these people that thrive on these industries, it's money and power and greed and sensationalism. We don't live in an information age, even though it's right here at our fingertips. We live in an entertainment age. And the word entertainment is derived from the word amused. And the word amuse means to be without thought. And what we know in healthcare is that the people who participate in masturbation and illicit sexual activities are those that have the least cognitive function. It's an animalistic thing that our bodies do naturally. So whenever you go to like a state school and you deal with mental retardation, these people, there's a major problem in these institutions where they're having sex with each other and they don't know how to control themselves. And my point is to say that the more that men are looking at pornography and participating in masturbation and illicit sex, the more animalistic they are. And then honest to goodness, the less they're using their brain And quite frankly, the dumber they are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a dumb, barbaric thing for us to be doing. And it's poison, and it's the demise of our future.
For such a time as this, though, because it's so sex-saturated culture and the decline and all these negative things, I'm reminded of the early church and so much problems and so much bad things that it's our call to be a saint. This is it. We need saints, radical, holy men and women that are going to say no, they're going to stand up, and they're going to do something about it. So that's what our call is. Let's do it.
God can fix it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I can do all
so
things,
I had to
yeah.
say that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I said I was going to say something that seemed very dark, but I apologize, because in your presence, I believe what I did is I just took away the opportunity and the hope that God can have in such a simple act as you just explained. Holy people. We just got to
There's
be
always an answer.
Yeah.
There's always hope.
Well, I think being also an example to our sons and being real with them. Like, this is out there. It's scary stuff, and it's something that needs to be avoided before the world gets to them. And it might have to be brought up to them at an early age, because what's the average age that a young man
super young.
sees pornography now?
7, lower,
8.
younger, who knows?
Well, get in a grocery store. It's sitting there on the counter a lot of times, and just not in maybe the full form, but I mean just in the stuff that people are wearing on these magazines and stuff. That might as well just be pornography as well.
I was so happy
But
the
they're
other
just
day.
trying to make it normal. That's the problem.
My oldest son, he said, I don't want a phone. I don't even know when I want one.
Sure.
Because he knows it's all there. That temptation is there, and why even put that in your life? Because the future is bright. There's so much good with God that why would you want something that could possibly hinder? There's good from it. I get it. Yeah. But in this time of his life, he doesn't need it. And I said, by all means, don't get it.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Put the phone down.
Yeah.
Put the phone
That's
down.
what I talked to a priest that did college ministry. I asked him what he told young people. He said, throw out the computer.
Yeah.
That was his solution, throw out the computer.
Yeah.
That's right.
But I interviewed a priest one time, and I was so impressed by he was part of this group that was fostering chastity and everything, and he could talk so beautifully about all these different elements of it, psychology and therapy and accountability and 12-step groups and everything. And I asked him, so I was hoping we'd get him on the show. He's going to tell us, how to stay away from this. And I said, what should they do? And he said, just do something. I remember I was so struck because this guy had all the answers. And he said, just start trying things to stop. Take action, whether it's
The worst thing you can do is nothing.
right.
Yeah.
You gotta make a change. If nothing changes, nothing changes. Right?
Yeah,
So
right,
you
right.
have to change, and it'll grow. God, I think, will lead you or put people in your life to help you, whatever you need. It might be some therapy things, or maybe there's some wounding you need to heal or something. But,
I think what they recommend the biggest is accountability partner. Just having somebody that you can go to and say, I'm struggling with this. And there's even apps that you can, or things that you can put on your computer and your phones, like I believe one of them is Covenant Eyes, that monitor your
Activity.
for
Know
you. Basically
thyself.
know thyself, but it's also that you're not alone.
Right.
It's like somebody's watching, because I think a lot of it is just lack of integrity. It's like, we're by ourselves. Nobody will know. I can get away with this. Nobody ever has to know. But it does affect you, and it affects how you treat other people, especially your wife and the female gender, because there's only two. Don't go there. Anyway, but that accountability partner, knowing somebody is there all the time, has a lot to do with it. And it's not that somebody's hovering over you. Oh, somebody's watching. No, it's somebody who's there, who cares about you and wants the best for you, and wants to help you get over this. So.
That human dimension and the spiritual, frequent confession. And if it's every
Absolutely.
few days,
Confession,
that
for
by
sure.
all means. But because the grace will 100% have an impact.
Yeah, turning to God and temptation and prayer, and I think that's just such a fundamental thing for all our vices. It's like it just seems like sometimes the last thing we want to do is ask God for help. Like exhaust all these other
He's
I'll
there.
change
I've had that thought. I've actually had that thought because I have people in my life that are sitting there going, "Oh my goodness, here he comes again. That guy is such a whiner." I feel like that's the way I am with God. It's like, God, I am whining again. Why? He's not going to want to see me when I come to heaven. He's going to be that guy going, "Oh man, here he comes."
I heard all talk from Bishop Barron. I thought it was so beautiful. He was talking about prayer, and he said he'd heard John Paul II say, that John Paul's a mystic, right? Carmelite spirituality, talk to God, or to Mary.
Yeah.
And he said as he got older in his life, John Paul said that he found himself simply asking for things more from God, like a child.
Wow.
And,
Wow.
I know, it really struck me because I know it just seems like I got to be beaten down to my knees sometimes to ask for help with particular problems and issues. It was like if I would just kind of do that first and then you seek some kind of solution, but ask for his guidance and help, and like a child to a father.
That's fantastic. I always say that my worst days are the days I don't say the simple prayer that I say every morning. Lord, I give you this day and everything in it.
Yeah. Well, Rome boys, Chris, Tony, Joe, thanks for joining us for the extended podcast version.
Yes.
You did a lot of production today, 2 shows and podcasts. But thanks for your work and your witness. And I think it's so good for men to share the faith because men are hurting right now. So
Thank you,
you.
Father Mark,
Thank
for all
you.
that you
Bless
do and all that EWTN does and everything Mother has set into action just is amazing.
Yeah.